Hey everyone, welcome to chapter 33. We are almost done with the semester. That's very exciting, right? In chapter 33, we're going to be looking at behavioral ecology. So, what is a behavior? It's an observable and coordinated response to environmental stimuli. That's what behavior is. And there are two major factors that affect behavior: nature, or your genes. So, this is what your chromosomes say, what is encoded on chromosomes, and nurture, the environment that you live in. So your your parents, friends. Oh, that's definitely not friends, is it? That's friends. And environment, okay? And both of these are going to influence your behavior, your response to different stimuli. So let's see how nature and then how nurture influence behavior. So the first thing we're going to look at is a maternal behavior in mice. There's a gene called the FOSB gene that gets stimulated when mom gives birth. Okay, so there's sensory information that moves to the hypothalamus, and this activates the FOSB gene. If mom has an active FOSB gene, then when mom sees her young, she's going to then start pulling the young to her, covering the young, keeping them warm, feeding the young. So that's what you see here. If mom does not have that FOSB gene, then mom is not going to care for those young effectively, and those young will likely die. And so that's what you're seeing in this picture. So that one allele is going to influence mom's behavior, and that would be nature. So now let's look at garter snakes. So garter snakes live all over. They're super common. You've probably all ran into a garter snake at one time or another. There is a genetic role in what type of foods they prefer. So there's inland populations. They feed on fish and frogs. And then there are coastal populations. So these are the terrestrial. And they feed on slugs. So inland populations, fish and frogs. Coastal populations, slugs. All right. So what they did was they pulled the snakes from inland and coastal into a laboratory, and then they gave them slugs. Inland populations refused the slugs, while coastal populations, of course, accepted them. And if you took and reproduced the snakes, one inland and one coastal, the hybrids intermediately accepted the slugs. So they kind of accepted, but they didn't accept as many. Okay, some accepted and some did not. So then they thought, well, why would this be? So that definitely says that there's some type of a behavior difference. But is it just that? And because the hybrid, that was the main reason, because the hybrid, some accepted the slugs and some didn't, they thought there must be some type of a genetic basis for this. So they looked at the tongue, because the tongue is where you have the sensory receptors, the taste receptors for snakes. They basically flick their tongue in the air and they can taste the air. So baby snakes presented with slug extract on the swab, and then they counted the number of tongue flicks. Coastal, the ones that actually ate the slugs, had a higher number of tongue flicks. So they thought, okay, maybe that's the difference. And it is. Let me go here. So here you have the inland snakes that like the fish and frogs, and down here you have coastal snakes that eat slugs. So if you look at the inland snakes, they have very few flicks, and so they don't have as many receptors, so they don't taste the slugs. Whereas over here you have many more receptors, or many more flicks, and that's associated with the receptors. So the snakes over here that have more flicks were able to taste the slug and were able to enjoy them. And that's the difference. So again, that's gene. Oh, that's not gene. Let me write it here. Genes influencing behavior. So another nature. I'm going to erase that. And finally, we'll talk about human studies. So when we take twins that have been raised apart, so I just looked up a picture of twin studies, and this is what I found. These are twins, super adorbs. I don't know if they were raised apart or if they were raised together. I don't know. I didn't actually read the article, but there's the article if you're interested in reading it. So in twin studies, though, twins that were raised apart still had certain characteristics that were similar. They still enjoyed similar foods. They still had activity patterns that were similar and mate selection that was similar. So all of these lead us to believe that there are definitely genetic influences on behavior. Not all behaviors are influenced by our genes, but many are. So now let's look at some behaviors that are influenced by nurture, or our environment. And actually, I'm going to stop here and we'll get into our next video talking about nurture. Okay? Bye.